We begin in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
My brothers and sisters, we have gathered together as sons and daughters of Francis and Clare. We are part of the Franciscan community. We think about and remember many other Franciscans in around this part of the world and other parts of the world, especially those who are in places that are challenging. We ask God to strengthen their faith, and we begin with
our Anglican Franciscan brothers and sisters, and it's great to have you here and to see you here. And Lloyd's just asked me to welcome you and to tell you what's happening today. I won't go through and welcome everybody by name, but you'll get to know each other during the day, I think. Now, the toilets are down there, and there's some supplies for sale, a koha box and so on, and I'll just run through the program. Our first speaker will be Deborah Newbury, who has something of a theological background, and she's going to talk about the Magnificat. And then we thought the Magnificat has got something to do with justice, you know, in the sentiments expressed by Our Lady. So we thought we'd bring the cry for justice in as part of the theme. So session 2, I was going to do a PowerPoint with Brother Philip, and now he's gone to a funeral. So Brother Michael's going to help me with the PowerPoint, and I'll read the content of it. Then we'll have a shared lunch, and then session 3 in the afternoon will be our Anglican brothers and sisters will do a session on justice and so on. And then we should wrap up sometime between 2:30 and 3. Yes. All right. Now, Deborah, are you ready for your session?
Okay, so we begin. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Come, Holy Spirit, and fill the hearts of your faithful. Enkindle in them the fire of your love. Send forth your Spirit, and they shall be created, and you shall renew the face of the earth. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. I'd like to begin with... Good morning. Today I'm going to talk on the spirit of the Magnificat. Brother Philip and Paul are going to talk on the cry for justice. I'll just begin with an introduction on a little bit about the relationship of St. Francis and the Blessed Virgin. Then I'll discuss the Magnificat commentary by St. John Ouse. Today is his feast day, and he wrote one of the best commentaries on the Magnificat. It's very well known. I'll then move into talking about the Gospel of Luke, particularly the theme of mercy and compassion, because this is so relevant to the Magnificat, and also linking back to the Old Testament, to the praise in 1 Samuel of Hannah, when she discovered that she was pregnant with Samuel. Then I'll also give you an opportunity to reflect, a bit of a Lectio Divina on the Magnificat, and then to feedback in groups, so we can look at some of the major themes, and then we'll finish with Francis's beautiful closing prayer to Mary.
Testi
Hello, for the session I did at the Formation Day today, the formations on the Magnificat and The Cry for Justice, I read through a PowerPoint that Brother Philip had picked up from a recent conference in Bali, and it goes through the scriptural background and church teachings and social doctrines and all the reasons why we Franciscans should be interested in justice, peace and the integrity of creation. And then we talk about some of the church structures and some of the commissions and things the Franciscans and others have set up around justice, peace and the integrity of creation. And I actually have the PowerPoint and the notes which were produced by Father Armando Trujillo, was the man who did it, but I can send those on to anyone who wants them at paulhitchfield@gmail.com. You can send them as attachments, so thank you.
I'm sorry that Chantal isn't here,
No.
but I think what they've given us is the basis of our order's teachings on social justice and the integrity of creation.
In the other area that we are trying to work with the youth is with cleaning up the environment, and Lyndon, who's filming us today, he's the minister at West Auckland, and along with his team, they've gone across to the local council and looked at what we can do. Because of our age profile, we're trying to bring the youth in to help us as well, whether it's planting of trees or doing some potting or cleaning the rivers around. So this is just a pilot project that we have got into. The council is willing to help us with this. They're very excited, and I think the first session is going to be in October, which is to coincide with the school holidays. So as soon as this session this program's been finalized, we'll pass the word around and make a start, because I think what they're saying is they could give us a patch which we could call the Franciscan patch, and then we look after it. You know, we plant trees, we clean up the place, and it becomes a Franciscan area that we look after. And if this works, I think we could probably spread that around to all the other fraternities, and I think even our Anglican brothers and sisters would like to join. If you're in West Auckland, we can keep you informed, and we could work together on that. Okay? So these are some of the things that we've started in a very small way, and hopefully we'll see where it takes us.
We're going to be starting with playing some of the beautiful Magnificat music and having a boy, it's an English copy, and it's just stunning. And one of our Franciscans is going to be talking about how when he was in the cathedral choir, as a young boy, he just loved this music, and it wasn't until he was much older that he realised the enormous disconnect between the music and the words, which are quite revolutionary and radical. So that's how we're going to be starting, and then we're going to be looking at, so Mary sang her song into the context of her time. What is the context of our time?
And what do we need to do to bring Mary's song, and Jesus' first words in his ministry were an echo of her song. And we are called to be Jesus in our time. So what are we called to do?
I'll now pass over to Pip, who will be leading a presentation for this afternoon. I just want to thank you very much for having us here in this lovely place. It's been good to be with you again and seeing old faces, new faces. Pip.
Good afternoon and thank you for being here. We're going to begin by listening to a beautiful rendition of the Magnificat, and then Michael is going to come and talk a little bit about his experience with this beautiful song. So if I can get my modern technology up and running.
Church-going family. My two brothers and I always sang in the parish choir, and that meant singing morning and evening prayer. For those of you not from that kind of background, morning evening prayer were a condensation of the 7 monastic offices. The first 2 became morning prayer, and Vespers and Compline were morphed into what was known as evensong or evening prayer. And for about 400 years after the Reformation, that was one of the main strengths and strands of Anglican worship, and still is in some cathedrals today. And I was very caught up, and I still am caught up, by the beauty of really good worship. And we worshipped in the cathedral, the Anglican cathedral in Wellington, which is the old one, now Old St Paul's. A beautiful old Gothic building, beautiful stained glass windows, beautiful music, and beautiful robes for the choir. And at its best, it was like a gateway into heaven. The beauty of opened up something transcendent. As I began to think about this as I grew up through my teenage years, I became aware, first of all, of this overwhelming beauty and the power of that beauty, but also how radical the words that we were singing were. The words that Mary sings in the Magnificat are actually quite revolutionary. And they have profound implications for our life and our society. But that there was a kind of disconnect between the beauty and the established sort of sense of order in the words and in the worship, and what actually we were singing, the actual meaning of the message. So it took me a long time, and I'm still working on it, to try and bring those two together.
So in this session we'll be focusing particularly on the yellow part of Mary's song. So Mary sang her song into the context of her day. So let's briefly look at what the context of her day was. So they were ruled by the Romans. There was peace, it was a peaceful empire. There were governors appointed to rule over the rural provinces. There was order, kept through taxes and military forces. And the various different groups, the various different ethnic groups were allowed to practice their own laws and customs so long as they didn't conflict with Roman interests. So let's look at who were the proud in those days, who were the powerful, who were the lowly, and the hungry and the rich in the context of first century Palestine. At the top of the triangle, you've got the emperor and the elite, 2 to 3% of the population. Next come the retainers, another 5 to 7% of the population. These were the aristocrats, the military officers, the bureaucrats, the tax farmers, the estate managers, the judges, the jailers, the religious people, the scholars and the scribes. Then 80% of the population, 80%, there was no middle class as we know it today in first century Palestine. So 80% of the population worked for their own survival and lived in poverty. Majority were peasant farmers and the others were fishermen, merchants, artisans, day labourers and service workers. And the final 10% were known as the expendables, the beggars, the criminals, the bandits. So that was the context into which Mary sang her song. So let's think about how was that context maintained? How did the Romans maintain their power, or the people at the top of that triangle? How was that power maintained? And how did the lowly remain low? So you had 90% of the population suffering from heavy taxation. Was that going to help them out of what they were suffering from? The Jewish people in particular were taxed 3 times over, to the Roman government, to the Jewish rulers and to the temple. There were threats of losing land and their livelihood. If you're highly taxed, it's hard to make ends meet. And it was a world of huge, huge social, economic and political inequity. So that's the context in which Mary sang her song.
Magnificat, anima mea Dominum, et exultavit spiritus meus.
It seems to me that the meeting between the Franciscans who are Catholic and the Franciscans who are Anglican once a year is really a highlight of our calendar, because it emphasises so well all the things that we have in common. So, for example, a couple of years ago we devoted this day to Pope Francis Laudato Si, which was quite new then. And there was just so much you could draw out of it that resonated for both the Catholics and the Anglicans present, and the things that we emphasise about Christianity through being Franciscan, and how those are common across all these old divides, which we could certainly do without. Now, and today we're moving on from the Magnificat to what that might be meaning in modern society. What raising the poor from the dust might mean in Aotearoa, New Zealand, in terms of the sorts of problems that we all face together, and how we could bring a common view from both our groups to that. And I've really appreciated myself meeting up with people that I've seen other years, and also last year Paul and I were looking at the possibility of meeting twice a year, because it's such a long time, but somehow we have so much on the calendars and plans, but we might pursue that a bit further.
The first thing I'd like to say is how much I appreciate to join with a group of people who think the same as I am, who are Franciscans. Also, what I've enjoyed about the speakers, they're sharing their own personal thoughts on certain subjects like the Magnificat and the different organisations within the Franciscan family. And I found it very enlightening because some of those things I did not know about. Had enough?